Hey guys, Stealth here. Today we're on Bloody Ridge. We're in Wargame Red Dragon, the modern day, or at least a lot more modern than Steel Division lately. We're here with Spect 96, Voids X, and Dr. Titus on Blue 4, SS20, Muammar Al Gaddafi, and David on the red team. This is going to be one of those games where you have an awful lot of smoke. And this is going to be put up mostly by Spect. We're going to be following Spect, and he's going to be using a NORAD general deck. He's going to be operating towards the middle of the map, Foxtrot, and this is of course pretty much a critical zone, especially considering it is Conquest. So whoever holds this zone is usually the one who's going to get the points. That's the one who's going to be drip feeding the +1. So controlling this area is going to be critical. But as you can see, there's not that much terrain cover. You have a little bit of tree line that you can use for cover for tanks and infantry. You have a forest here, which is usually fought over with infantry, and towards the exit or towards the outside you're going to have tanks and fire support vehicles. And then it's a long way if you want to go from this side to the other one, or vice versa. And again, it's a pretty thick forest, so that means that infantry is going to be very welcome here. But here's the thing, how do you get there? Well, you get there with an absolute lot of smoke. We have Voids X on support here, and just to highlight how important the smoke is, Spect is immediately starting out with two M125A1 smoke supporters, or mortar units, as well as starting out with two M1A2s and M1A1HC, so he's going full super heavy. He has a couple of Bisons with infantry, a couple of V150s with, I believe, Rangers, and that's going to be his starting force. And of course, one Chaparral in case the enemy starts to use helicopters. These super heavies are going to play a critical part in his strategy. They're going to be a really vital part. Now as for the others, on the left here we have Dr. Titus with what seems to be a British deck. You can see a Challenger Marksman, a Stormer or two. He has a couple of Saxons, a quad stack of Saxons even there, a Centurion AVRE. And towards the right we have Voids X, who's going to be using a Eurocore deck. We have a couple of Fuchs, Mistrals, Crotals, a couple of engineer units, and of course a command infantry unit. Now let's kick this game off. Oh, there's another V150 with a recon, and a Leopard 2A5. This is going to be another crucial unit in this game. So, off we go. Now, we're going to move up pretty quickly towards the front line. I don't mind doing that at 5 times the speed. If you're using mortars to put up smoke screens, it's wise to keep them as separate units. And I believe that Spect has them hotkeyed, because he's switching from one to the other very quickly, and it's very quick to put up a smoke screen if you have them hotkeyed. In case you don't know how to do that, select the unit, hold Control down and press one of your numeral keys, so Control 1, Control 2, Control 3, etc. And then you can quickly pull them up. And then you can use B to quickly deploy a smoke screen. So he's initially deployed smoke here, so that his infantry units can be offloaded. He's using the Bisons as what seems to be cheap transports and cheap lookouts. More so along the lines of an active scout that is only going to really tell you that something is shooting at it, but not so much what, because by the time that it recognizes that it's being fired at, it's usually dead. M1A2's pushing up, M1A1HC pushing up, and the amount of smoke that he's putting up is there to cover his tanks. This M1A2 currently does not have any line of sight. That's not the point, but it's keeping the M1A2 concealed and putting it in safety of this tree line. And this is just the work of 2 mortar units, that's all. They fired about 20 rounds each, putting up a pretty dense smoke screen, and these smoke screens are going to be absolutely vital later on. We're going to see a very large area here concealed in smoke. I thought we had a smoke meta at some point in World of Warships, but apparently Wargame Red Dragon has it just as much. Now a couple of motor strokies forced to pull back. And note how a couple of T-80UMs are pushing forward, and they're immediately being covered by smoke from the red team in order to make sure that they don't immediately get knocked out by the M1A2. M1A2 going into a gunfight with the T-80UMs, taking a good hit. One of them's down, but M1A2 is also taking a good battering, so it's going to have to retreat and get repaired. which in Wargame thankfully you can still do, as opposed to Steel Division. M1A1C as well as the 2A5 are quickly dashing back into cover, and not a moment too soon as an ATGM just narrowly shaves by the 2A5. You can see that the M1A1 is still spotted, the 2A5 there is neutralizing the concourse, and the ATGM flies off harmlessly. Now towards the left, the British aren't doing that well. They have not made it towards the town, and they're being pushed on pretty heavily. Looks like we have a couple of Yakari coming in, we have a tank here pushing forward pretty aggressively. And unless those guys get close, there's not a lot that they can do about that. So we're going to have to be a bit patient and see if they can get close enough for the paratroopers with their Law 80s to take them out. But unless he gets assistance quick, he's not going to be around here for much longer. Anyways, in the meanwhile, Spect has turned on the wheat generator yet again, and is now smoking up his own M1A2s. He smoked up the Mistrals, the VTTs, and this allows the units that are moving up to get there pretty much unscathed. There's not that much that they can do to damage them. A couple of T-80s from Gaddafi are coming up. They have been spotted by the Rangers. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have any good optics of their own. There's no recon infantry to spot them. Unfortunately, the Rangers get wiped out quickly before the M1A1 could actually take out those tanks. In the meanwhile, the surviving T-80UM is making life very, very difficult for the Highlanders and the Canadian Airborne. The Leopard 2A5 is trying to win a gunfight with whatever is out there. Unfortunately, from its current position, it does not quite have the line of sight for the kill on the T-80UM. The Peace Rhine from Voidex tried to get a kill, didn't quite get it, but the T-80UM has been damaged and is thereby forced to retreat for a bit. Now, the enemy team does have a BRM-1K over here. These things come with exceptional optics, but they're also pretty pricey at 50 points. So if we can wipe it out quickly, that would help. So he's pushing the Rangers forward, and the Mistral has in the meanwhile spotted yet another Super Heavy that's operating on the front line and coming closer. A T-72BU. Not a good thing that you want to have close. Leopard 2A5, pretty well concealed in the tree line as well as inside a smoke screen, so he should be fine. And I believe that all of the other Super Heavies are still alive. The M1A2 got repaired here by the LHVWs. The other M1A2 has been detracked but is otherwise alright. And the M1A1HC has taken quite a good hit there and is currently forced to retreat. You can see that as the M1A1HC took a good hit, that may have been from the T-80s, he's immediately putting up a defensive smokescreen to keep the M1A1HC safe, making sure that this tank can make it back to safety and thereby get repaired and not lose a 155 point tank. In the meanwhile, the Highlanders are trying to get their Erics into range. They have been able to get one kill there, and I believe that both of the T-80s there are dead. But of course, they can never get into range of the T-72BU and get wiped out in the process. Now, Bluefor was doing pretty well. Unfortunately, they have not been able to hold on to India. The British have been completely wiped out there. And Titus is now reinforcing this position as quickly as he can. But he's running right into the resistance that has been there, kicking him out of the zone. So he's putting up a help marker, or Voidex is doing that. Unfortunately, there's not really a good way to get in here without any kind of smokescreen. Or just trying to walk in, but I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. Now, when in doubt, usually you just put up more smoke. So a third mortar carrier is coming up, and there is another smokescreen being put up by Spect, trying to make sure that the M1A2 can get a bit closer. Nice kill there. I believe that that was the T-72BU. He can now get closer with the M1A2, although it has taken some damage, so he needs to be a bit careful and not put this thing up against the Super Heavy. V150 dashing forward, and note how he's using the smokescreen as a bit of mobile cover. Not so much so that the tank is completely concealed, it can still do some damage, but it can very quickly retreat to within the smokescreen if it needs to. Okay, and apparently the T-72BU is not dead, whereas the second one. And it has managed to kill off the transport through the Canadian rifles. V-150 as well as the 495 dashing forward, quickly trying to make sure they drop off their cargo here ASAP before that tank manages to push forward. Spect comes in with a Raven and a Hornet, manages to hit and kill a Tunguska. Actually, I was expecting him to kill the BU, but he managed to kill a Tunguska. M1A2 moving back. He realized that the tank has been damaged and he's now trying to get it back to, once again, behind the smokescreen so it can get refueled and repaired by the Jupiter that Voidzax has put forward. Refueling, unfortunately, has been disabled by this unit, so he's only going to be getting some spare parts, and thereby he's pulling his unit back to, once again, through the smokescreen to the tree line here. On the front line, we still have a couple of red tanks that are making life difficult for the guys over here. Fortunately, all super heavies are still alive. The M1A2s are surviving, the Leopard 2A5 is perfectly alright, and the M1A1HC has been pulled back and is awaiting repair. Now note that he has two Patriots standing by. They have been taken, they have been hammered quite a bit, as you can see. They've taken a lot of fire, but at least they're alive. Hornet there dodging a few missiles as it tries to get a hit on one of those tanks. It manages to do just that, gets a kill, and manages to get another missile into this tank on its way out. Has taken a lot of damage, but it got what it came for, and it took out yet another vehicle. Meanwhile, the Canadian rifles are going up against what seems to be a grenade launcher vehicle. And over on the right, we have a 5-man recon team, Rezvetkas. Once again, Spect putting up a smokescreen, trying to keep the people on this side at bay, making sure that they cannot provide a supportive fire as well. So the Canadian rifles are making their way forwards. There's another Canadian airborne group trying to push in, trying to get the kill on these guys and relieve pressure on the Canadian rifles. They have been panicked, but I wonder how much damage these guys can do. Meanwhile, I have a couple of tanks dashing in. Still no positive ID on them, but we might be able to trick the game into telling us what those are. Not anymore. T-72 M1 mods. 165 points. I'd say super heavies. 21 frontal armor, 23 AP on the gun, meaning that they can easily slice through the frontal armor of the M1A2 and the Leopard 2A5. So you need to be careful. In the meanwhile, the Canadian rifles have done their job. They have managed to push out the enemy infantry, but are now getting killed off by all the fire support that's over here, as well as the T-72BU making it out to safety. Now with the left flank crumbling, and the British not doing very well today, the enemy team has been able to secure Echo, which of course they already controlled, and Blue 4 is not able to control India. So they are not actually able to get a neutral score there. And Team 2, or Red 4, is slowly but steadily gaining a +1 and getting quite close to Blue 4's 77 points. Now, more smoke being put up, making sure that these tanks are either forced to retreat or go blind. And the smokescreen on the right side might have been a diversion. I'm not exactly sure what Spect was up to with that smokescreen, because units from over here are not really going to have a lot of line of sight on whatever's happening here. And I think that Red 4 knew enough about the situation here that they were not expecting an infantry push or motorized push to quickly make their way through the smokescreen and dropping off the infantry here. So what exactly this smokescreen is for, I'm not sure. May have been a diversion. Now the Highlanders here took a hit. They're standing by to deal with a tank, but their range is only 1,000 meters on the Erics. It's not a very long range weapon system. It hits very hard when it is in range, and it's quite accurate. But until they get into range, you might want to keep them alive, and that's once again why we put up a smokescreen. 3 M125s are currently smoking up the place, and some of them are starting to pretty quickly chew through their ammunition supplies. As you can see, this one is almost empty. This one is still on 20 rounds, and the other one was brought in later, but is down to 75 rounds-ish. Now on the left, Red 4 has taken India, putting them at a +1. And unfortunately there's not a lot that Blue can do about it. They are, however, trying to work together, I believe, to push in from the other side as well. Wojtek is using the Leopard 2A5. We have a Leclerc coming in. We have 30 Jaeger pushing forward. And these guys can do quite a bit of damage to tanks with their PZZ F44. 16 AP, so if you can get a side shot you can pretty quickly eradicate a tank. And the Leopard 2A5 and the Leclerc might be able to help out, but a massive impact just hit the Jaegers there. Immediately lost 6 guys. There's another 4 dead. We definitely have something heavy shooting at them. It's a unit from David. AGGM's impacting the 2A5. 1 hit, 1 missed. And we have a whole lot of infantry in these woods. There's a T-64BM, a couple of Spados. This is going to get pretty difficult for just 13 Jaeger to go through. So another group of reinforcements is coming in. Leopard 2A5 took yet another hit. This guy needs to get his ass into safety. Bombing run comes in, probably wiping out a decent amount of the Kartaniekeri that were in that forest. But we can just never be sure about it. A couple of cluster munitions coming in, potentially hitting the tank. I'm not sure if that was the tank that went up in flames, but it might have been. And over on the right we have Dr. Titus pushing in with a couple of Rardens, Royal Marines and Centurion AVREs, which are very quickly going to stun and kill off these VDV. Fortunately there are no tanks here. Hornet comes in, wipes out 1 transport. Nighthawk moves in and drops right on top of the Kartaniekeri and completely wipes them out. So now it might be slightly more safe to push in here. In the meanwhile, on the front line, we have the 2A5, which is going right close to the T-72 M1 mods. The M1A2, same deal. The Highlanders unfortunately have been wiped out. And for some reason, and I think that this was some sort of unlucky move, one of the mortar carriers decided to jump across the field and got wiped out. So at this point he still has 2 of them left, and I believe that we're going to see more incoming, but that is a little bit ways down the line. The M1A2s are still together. Where is their M1A1HC? There it is. Their buddy is still alive. Rangers have been able to spot the T-80Us, so we know exactly where they are. We know that they are in pretty decent condition. The question is, can we take them out? That is going to be the real deal. Can we take them out without those reflex missiles doing significant damage to the tank that is going to be taking out this unit? So yet again, a smokescreen being put up. Bison's rushing forward, trying to get control of this forest. And he does have enough fire support units in the sense of these tanks on the left to make sure that units cannot be reinforced from this position. But you never know about this road. A couple of Razvedkas have been spotted on the left. Time to get these guys out of action quickly before they get too good of a look at all these super heavies here. And look at that! One of the T-72 M1 mods is dead. Highlanders, 90 at very short range, used 2 of their Eric's missiles. We know that one of those super heavies is dead, the other one not so sure. And at this point the second group of Highlanders has been completely wiped out thanks to a couple of grenade launchers coming from that forest. Unfortunately the smoke is keeping these guys safe, but it doesn't last forever. So they're going to have to try and get this thing out pretty quick and then use that tree line for themselves. Otherwise they might find themselves out in the open against a grenade launcher. Although one of them just got wiped out by the F-18 Hornet that came in. Raven doing a couple of circles. Osa might be trying to get a shot at them. Sea Hornet comes in, wipes out yet another tank, and narrowly avoids an Osa. But the Osas are still active. One of them got hit by the Sea Harrier, and the other one's taken out by the Nighthawk. So their AA on the left flank should be clear. Now the right flank, the infantry that was carried by those BMP-1Ds is now coming out to play at short range with the Highlanders. And there's the BMP-1D that brought it. Unfortunately, the Highlanders stand no chance against such firepower and get wiped out very quickly. Modestrelki may have been taken out. Even more smoke is being put up on the front line. We have one smoke carrier or one mortar carrier that's being resupplied here by the HLVWs. The other one is completely empty. We have a fresh one that just came in, another one on the left flank, and yet another one down the road. So he has 3 mortar carriers on this side, one on the front and one slightly towards the back that still needs resupplies. And we have a whole train of units coming in. TH495, M163CS, a couple of, basically a couple of combinations of these. Over on the left, Blue 4 is doing quite well. The Centurion, Aviary and the Leopard and the Leclerc are securing this area from infantry and tanks. We have a request for spotting whatever this is. Not exactly too sure. At least what we do have is another smokescreen. And this smokescreen does allow the units that are in the town, or that are actually moving on the town, to not get shot at on their way there. You can see that the enemy tried to fire an ATGM, but the smokescreen immediately blocked the line of sight. And since these things are line of sight weapons, they don't actually work that well if you don't have it. So they're basically just wasting missiles. And thanks to the command infantry here by Wojciech's, they are no longer in control of the zone. And I have actually taken it back from Red, so that they are now at a neutral score. But Red has already doubled the amount of points that Blue 4 had. They're at 77 versus 152, so there is still a lot of work to be done there. Now we have a unit coming up pretty quickly. A couple of Scott 2s. We need to take these guys out fast, otherwise they're going to drop off their infantry. So the Royal Marines come up to play, immediately wiping out 3 transports, 4 transports. Maybe the transports were empty. I really hope so. Otherwise it's going to be more difficult to get these guys out of the way. But there are a whole bunch of Roydens there to back them up. Although Roydens, I prefer to keep them at shorter or at longer range, because they don't really carry any armor. 1 frontal armor. That's it. Another quad stack of Yakety 90. Looks like these guys have already taken quite a battering. We have 1 Leopard 2, who's trying to keep 16 guys at bay. Unfortunately, the Leopard 2 has a pretty decent amount of armor. And for some reason these Yakety, there we go, they're now firing their laws. Not doing that much damage to the Leopard 2. He backs off a little bit. Fires again. Yakety down to 5 guys. Come on. 2 guys. Leopard 2 is going to win this fight. Now, over on the right, or towards the middle. Oh, that was a Patriot. Or was it? Yep, one of his Patriots just got knocked down. The other Patriot managed to get a bit of vengeance there, and the Sea Aircraft goes down. But Patriots, of course, are very expensive. So the loss of one of those things is unfortunate, especially considering the fact that you can only get 2 of them. The good news is that Blue 4 is now in control of Foxtrot. They have a command unit in this zone. You can see it here, an AT-105C. It is in control, so Blue 4 is now regaining their points, a slow rate of +1. But more importantly, they seem to be in full control of this tree line over here. And yes, they don't have a lot of units, just 8 Highlanders and 1 M1A2 that is in the middle of a burning forest. But at least they have it. That's the good news. The bad news is that they are being spotted, and that the Highlanders are now taking a lot of fire from T-80Us, 3 of them no less, and that there's not that much that he can do about it at the moment. He can keep them spotted pretty much until the Nona on this end immediately puts up a smoke screen and reconceals the tanks. And the Leopard 2A5 is being smoked prematurely, making sure that it doesn't get detected or attacked by those T-80Us. As Wojciech is not operating only on this end, but also towards the left flank, so he might have a bit of... he might have his attention on this side much more than on the middle. Now over on the right we have 1 Highlander surviving, but fortunately there are reinforcements on the way. We have Canadian rifles. In case there is a rush from the enemy team, these guys are going to be able to stop them. And of course they do bring friends. We have TH-495s with autocannons, which can be quite effective at suppressing enemy infantry before it comes in. Now, M1A2 pushing forward, getting the Resvetkas out of the way. Here's the one M1A2, we have the M1A1HC, and the other M1A2 is over on the right flank. Now, I don't know about you, but by this point, my super heavies would probably already be dead. But Spect is so adept at using all of this smoke that it is really... well, actually, it's incredibly effective at keeping these tanks alive. Just making sure that these very good investments don't, unfortunately, get wiped out by an HEGM plane, a tank, a stray HEGM, or some sort of bomber. Now, Titus and Spect here are coordinating their offenses. We have Titus saying there's an HEGM in this position. So, once again, we have Spect putting up a smokescreen wall so that the Royal Marines and whoever else there are on the offensive might be able to push out and get them. Titus has moved forward his stack of Rardens and seems to be ready to push in. But we don't quite know how much there is in that town, so you gotta be quite careful there. Patriot out of missiles and out of hit points as well. Just one hit point left. I'm not sure why he kept it active though. You might argue, well, it's useless now, considering it's out of missiles, but I'm not sure if it can still be detected by seed when it's out of ammo. I don't believe so, but just to be sure, I would turn it off. But I'm probably going to be getting comments from you guys saying, well, if it doesn't have any missiles, it is not actively radiating, so it shouldn't be detectable by seed. Now, here we found some HEGMs, or rather the HEGMs found the AVRE. A couple of Concours there, nothing too heavy, but we do need to get rid of them. They seem to have a transport. Actually, was that a command vehicle? That may have been a command vehicle. Racing away and trying to get a flanking maneuver, potentially trying to get into India to neutralize the income that Blue 4 has. Another artillery salvo comes in from the mountains here, suppressing units that are on this left flank to make sure that they cannot push up and that Red can hold on to this town for just a little longer. But Red, of course, has all other issues. They're still trying to kick Blue out of the middle of the map in Foxtrot. And, of course, surprisingly, there's not that much going on the right flank. Sappers, Mistrals, a couple of Jaeger, we have some BGS for spotting there. One Fuchs over on the right in case the enemy tries to maneuver around them. But that's just about it. There's nothing else there. Leopard 2A5 tries to move forward, potentially to get a shot on the T-80U. Narrowly misses the shot, immediately ducks back into the cover, and not a moment too soon because it immediately got answered by an HEGM. And they probably smelled weakness on the 2A5, probably checked out his hit points, and they're now pushing on him with two T-80Us. And whatever we have here, I believe it's another T-80U, potentially a UM. Nope, it's another T-80U. We really need to get this thing into cover. He's reversing even further, and yep, the T-80Us are backing off again. Now, how are Spect's mortars doing? We have one out of ammo. These guys are, well, they may have two salvos in them left. This one salvo, and this one is pretty much out of ammo. And unfortunately, Wojciech has turned off his fob. I'm not exactly sure why he's doing that, because I believe that Spect has done nothing but use smokescreens very effectively towards the middle of the map and the left, where Wojciech is operating himself, to conceal Wojciech's units or make sure that the enemy does not have line of sight so he cannot hit his units. So why exactly Wojciech is turning off his fob so that Spect's mortars cannot resupply, I don't really understand. I mean, if somebody is using nothing but artillery, nothing but MLRS, to just continuously fire at enemy positions where you might get a few kills, then yeah, I understand why you would not activate your fob for others. But if you're using mortars to effectively and tactically lay smoke, and then make sure that both you and your allies are secure, I'd say that that's a team player and that is someone who does get to use your fob. Spect is even asking nicely here, please activate your fob. Nope. Fob's closed for today. So all of the smoke that Spect has been using on the front line can no longer be relied upon. As his smoke screens are done, it's going to be difficult to push up. And in the meanwhile, we do have an offensive from Red coming on the left flank. Look at that, they even have a UAZ in the zone to neutralize the income. As weak as their position is, they did immediately bring in a UAZ. That's how quickly they need to get this zone under control. And control is something I use loosely here. It's not so much along the lines of you need to have full control of the zone, just make sure that you deny control for the enemy. Tunguska narrowly avoids death as the Nighthawk dropped a pretty large salvo here. That thing was lucky to make it out alive. Now the command vehicle is dead, so blue is once again at a +1. Hopefully securely enough. Over on the right, it seems that red is trying to push in. We have a couple of BMP-3s with Motostrelki trying to move up. Canadian rifles are immediately being put on the ready. And the smokescreen that you see here was put up by red. So this is not one of Spect's smokescreens, as he is still begging for scraps from Voidzex, who is absolutely unrelenting in that regard. So he's going to have to make do without the smokescreens. And that means that without the smokescreens, Voidzex 2A5 is going down. Spect could have avoided this if he had gotten the reinforcements or the resupplies from the FOB from Voidzex. But thank you, Voidzex. You just sacrificed your own 2A5. Moreover, I believe we have finally lost a Leopard, correction, an M1A2, as the infantry that pushed in here not only went through the infantry that was in front, but also through the tank that was somewhere in the middle of the forest there. So unfortunately, he no longer has any tanks here. We do have a couple of fire support units, the M163CS. We have an HGM in case something gets out of the forest and gets a bit too close. And the artillery that you can see descending on that forest over there is the artillery from Voidzex. A couple of Caesars. Now, isn't that a bit of irony right there? On the left, the battle is still raging. The SAS are finally killed off. And while Voidzex does have a couple of Fuchs with some infantry inside and is bringing up a fresh Leclerc, there's not that much that he can do to keep control of these woods. Fortunately, there's only a little over 8 minutes left in the game, so hopefully they can hold on to their +1 for long enough, or make sure that they stick at neutral for long enough, so that the enemy does not get that +1 and does not take them over in points. A couple of BMP-3s there moving forward, supposedly without receiving spotter support. But they are definitely spotting all the HGMs that are coming for them. A couple of Milan 2s from Dr. Titus. We have the Milan F3s from Voidzex. And yet another Milan F3 team. Now it seems that not everybody is out of smoke screens. Red is definitely making use of them as well. And these smoke screens are now blinding the HGM positions. So maybe the BMP-3 was there as a sacrificial unit to spot exactly where those mortars or where those HGMs are coming from. Because notice how effectively they're blinding all of the HGMs that blue has positioned along this ridge line here, along this tree line. They have done it so much so that these units cannot spot anything. Now we have a request for smoke here, and this is something that the T-80Us are now going to be able to use to keep pushing. M1A2, M1A1HC pushing forward, immediately wipes out a transport. But there's 3 T-80Us that we know of, 4 T-80Us, and that's all we can identify, but there might be more. M1A1 goes in for the kill, I believe killed one of the T-80Us. Took another hit there. There's another T-80U dead. M101 HAs now pushing forward as well. Getting damage in on the Motostrelkis. And the smoke that is being put forward here, I'm not sure who's providing it. Is that from these guys? Now the mortars from Spect have finally been resupplied. I think that Voidzax had no choice but to open up his fall because his own Caesars were running out of ammo. So Spect's mortars are now available, but their range is insufficient for them to help out here. You can see that Red 4 has done a good job pushing forward. They inflicted quite a bit of damage, and yes, they've taken some damage as well, but at least they wrestled control back over this forest and this tree line to some extent. And they're now able to bring in a command vehicle of their own, so that they're now at a 248 versus 152. Yes, they're still behind, but Red is at least no longer losing points. So that's an improvement from their previous situation. And the question is now, can we spot that command vehicle quickly enough to get rid of it? A couple of M1A2s here, or M1A1 and M1A2 pushing forward. T-80A took a good hit. Unfortunately his Raven got blown out of the sky. There's a kill. Can we get the T-72BU please? M1A2 took a good hit. BU took a hit from the M1A1. Fire computer is set. That's really unfortunate because his accuracy just dropped about 8%. He's pushing forward with infantry, but where previously he was pushing forward with infantry with smoke support, the infantry now has absolutely no support, so they're going to have to try and make do and just move towards the other side of the field without any sort of cover. This seems to be a little bit more along the lines of World War I tactics. And I believe that even there they had smoke cover. M1A2, lucky to be alive. And it seems that the infantry push has been noted and is now being punished by what might very well be a Buratino strike. So the infantry, the survivors that is, are trying to scramble to cover. M1A1HC getting close in, trying to get eyes on a tank or a vehicle that may be threatening the infantry. So they're trying to dash forward. Bison just got taken out. That's one of those surviving T-80Us. They're doing a one-on-one slugfest with the M1A1. Took a hit from an HGM and the tank. Come on, fire again. Hit him again. And another HGM hits the tank. Come on. There we go. We spotted the command vehicle. Immediately put an attack marker onto it, but this is going to be a bit much for the infantry to chew through. 2 BMPTs. The M18C though shouldn't have that many issues with chewing through a couple of these guys. Although at short range, even that autocannon can be quite destructive. Gets a hit, gets a kill, that's 1 BMPT done. He sees his opportunity. Come on, keep pushing. He's probably too concerned about the infantry. And this might be another bit of his concern. A T-80UK. T-80UK, this is very fortunate for Spect. He fired with his M1A1HC, neutralized the gun on the T-80UK, neutralizing the weapon completely. But unfortunately there's another BMPT close, which is trying to suppress the tank with an autocannon. So he's going to have to chew through this thing first. He hits the BMPT, but it survives thanks to his tank chassis. The Nighthawk came in, tried to drop. One bomb went a little bit to the south and the other one came down on the other end of the map. Come on. That thing is going to be pretty much repairing its gun right about now, so it's going to have about 30 seconds left. There we go. Close in. Got him. Kill on the command tank. Blue is back at their +1, but at a cost. They have lost quite a lot of infantry here. They have lost one of the M1A2s, and reinforcements are immediately being put forward. Although they are empty, they can still suppress enemy infantry as it gets close. They can also function as ATGM magnets. Once again, he's trying to push forward. At this point, happily, his mortars are back into the fight. And once again, the smoke screen is online. making it so that his tanks are at least a bit safer. Now the Patriot's been rearmed and immediately gets wiped out by a Seed aircraft. And since that is the full extent of the AA that he had over here, short of those pivads, he unfortunately has nothing left that can deal with enemy aircraft. There is, however, a Roland 3 from Voidzax, but it's on stand down. It is not actively firing. And in the meanwhile, the M1A1HC that so courageously pushed forward into that T-80UK is now being pushed back, not by the MTLBVs, but by the contents that they carried, as it doesn't need much to get killed off at a Motostrelkis. So he's trying to rush out, trying to keep his distance from those Motostrelkis. Full reverse, trying to get a shot in, but he's barely got a line of sight on them. Bison's pushing forward, Canadian Airborne offloaded, M163CS with their Vulcans. We just need to get a good line of sight on these guys. Looks like something else just got blown up there, or at least took a good hit. Another M1A1HA on the front line. And note how he has 2 Apaches standing by. 2 longbows. He probably had a lot of points saved up. And these guys, of course, are pretty fragile. But any tank that happens to get close to them is going to instantly regret that action, as it is very, very likely to take 1 or 2 HGMs from the combined fire of these longbows. And considering that these things double tap, they're actually quite likely to take 4 missiles if they get spotted. The M1A2 on the left flank, the surviving M1A2, has taken a heavy battering and is going to need quite a bit of repairs. But fortunately, that won't really be an issue, as the game has 15 seconds left on it. You can see that they're still trying to come back with a command vehicle, but there's not really that much that the command vehicle can do really inside 5 seconds. So, smoke screens. They can help you win the day. They can help you win the match, and they can help you win the middle. So if you see that somebody is using smoke screens, please, for the love of God, open your fob and make sure that they can use it to not just support their own forces, but to support yours as well. So, Spect got 4,585 points in kills, 2,690 in losses. And something I'm very interested in is what those tanks actually did. M1A2 took out a T-80UM, but that's the only high value kill that it got. M1A1HC didn't get any really high value kills either, but was very much instrumental in keeping all the infantry and the HGMs at bay. A couple of spotter units there. A T-80A. Patriot took out a MiG-29-913. The Hornet came in a couple of times, taking out a T-80UM a couple of in 1989, so that thing definitely got its money's worth. Raven got a couple of kills. The other Hornet did quite a bit of damage. The Nighthawk took out an Mi-26. That's interesting. That's a large resupply helo. Took out a Ka-52 that probably happened to be hovering close to the impact zone. T-64BM. Look at the kill list on that thing. The other M1A2, a couple of tanks, T-80U, T-80A. But something I'm not really seeing is where all those other super heavies got killed off. I think that Palmer here and the M1A1HA did quite a bit. 2 T-80Us. Here we have the M1A1HC that pushed forward, got the kill on the T-80UK, and apparently survived the match. And the Canadian Rifles, well, nothing too much there. His losses were mostly inflicted by tanks. Look at that. T-80UM. T-80s, T-72BUs, more T-72BUs, T-72 M1 mods, a couple of infantry of course, and transports getting killed off by the grenade launchers. There's the T-80U, there's the Buratino that took out some of his infantry in the last moments of the match. A couple of T-80Us, again on the kills against the Highlanders and the transports. More T-80Us. Bloody hell, those tanks really pulled a number on him. That's a lot of damage. Anyway, if you're interested in seeing what Spect has in his deck, he put the deck code in the description so you can use it for yourself. It may not be to your liking, so if you're newer to the game, just try to experiment with the deck or adjust it as you see fit. Anyway, that concludes it for this video. Let me know what you think about all the smoke that Spect put up and how you have used smoke so far to keep your units safe. And if you learned something, then definitely let me know what you take away from this video, because I for one definitely learned to use more smoke. I already use quite a bit of it in Wargame, but I just need to use more. I need to get more of the smoke on the front line. So that's my takeaway. Anyway, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon for more.